everybody. Present day cultural landscape seems to be in India, also in our Goa, more so in Goa. A. Language versus language. B. Script versus script. And C. Language versus script. We have all sorts of contradictions and controversies which are over there. Now this war has indeed wounded the social psyche of our society, and our society is suffering from multiple micro fractures. They are not visible from outside, but they are very much there. Now I am not a competent person, I am a lawyer, I am not a doctor or anything. So I am not a competent person to diagnose why we are turning mad and why we the people are shying away from our rich tradition and legacy of rejoicing in different languages and different states. That has been a tradition of India. Somehow we are walking away from it. Though I cannot diagnose it, Honorable Gulzarji is here and I would like to listen from him on it. But I can confidently prescribe, or since I am an advocate, I can confidently advocate in medicine. And the medicine is book Jagatana, written by Neeta Torne. She is the poet of the book. She has written it originally in Marathi. This is a multilingual poetry book, in the sense that along with her Marathi, she has composed the poems in Marathi. But along with that, there are various translations in it, translations in Konkani, translations in Marathi, and translations in Hindi. So this is a 4-language book that is going to be released at hand of Honorable Gulzarji over here. Priyanka Parab, who is present, she has translated it in Konkani, Sneha Parab in Hindi, Antara Bide in English, Neha Vadkar in English, and Archana Gaitonde. Neeta and her team, they have set their sail and they are holding high a flag of friendship. In this war where everybody is getting wounded and turning inimical to each other, and we have to, it is a flag of friendship and coexistence which they have upheld through this book. The publisher of this multilingual expression is Arya Prakashan of Mershi. Professor Dr. Anand Patil, in his lucid foreword, has aptly summarized this venture as a Goan feminist poetry coming of age. So that is another facet of this. One is uniting hearts, uniting different languages. And secondly, I guess that's the role of the women. We men, we fight. The women unite us. Sometimes it's a different thing that we fight because of women. That's a different issue. But he has aptly described it as that. And this book is also blessed by a very thought-provoking professor from Dr. Gitali, who is the editor of Mule Sarasedi. It is oft-repeated quote. This book consists of the original poetry and the translations. A few words about translation, I don't want to take you much time. It is the oft-repeated quote that translation is like a woman. If it is beautiful, it is not faithful. And if it is faithful, it is certainly not beautiful. This another thing, there are two philosophies about the translation of books of this sort. They say, reading a book through translation is like kissing a woman through veil. That is one. And the opponents of this theory argue, no, it is not kissing somebody through veil. Reading a book through translation is kissing yet another woman. Something totally different, because something gets lost in translation, they say. Now what has happened in this book, that is something that you will have to find out. Yes, a translation has inherent difficulties. More so when you talk of, when the concepts like spiritual concepts and all come, when something cannot be grasped by senses, when something is beyond senses, how do we find words for it? And how do we transpose those words from one language to another? We have the famous quote of Tagore, not a quote, a poem by Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore, our poet laureate, has said, the water in the vessel is sparkling, the water in the sea is dark. Small truth has words that are clear, the great truth has great silence. Now any poetry, this is a poetry book, it attempts to express the great silence at any time. So it is very, for any poetry, forget the translation, it is very difficult to express something in an original also. What do we expect from this book? What do we expect from a translation of a poetry? I mean, there are sometimes, you have your father and you click his photograph, and will the photograph be identical to that of the son or a daughter? Not necessarily. What I guess we want in translation is, even if some likeness of the father comes, you look at a son, you look at a daughter, and you say, yes, these are the children of this father or this mother. It is that kind of a thing that has perhaps to come. It is again an oft-repeated quote that translating is like carrying the perfume of one bottle, picking up the perfume from one bottle and packing it in another bottle or releasing the... Now it is but natural that when you take the perfume from one language and you put it in another, some perfume is bound to get lost. It is bound to get evaporated. But then this is a risk that has to be taken. Shall we say that no, nobody should attempt translating poetry because poetry gets lost? No, if you don't take risk in life, I mean the greatest risk in life is not taking any risk. So Neeta and her team, they have taken this risk. Since Gulzar ji is here, I would like to quote, as they say, हमने देखी है उन आँखों की महकती खुशबू. What a translation has to serve perhaps is like if the translators, Neeta has seen that खुशबू and the translators have seen her seeing that खुशबू, that महकती खुशबू. If they can reach that खुशबू to us, I think the purpose of this book will be served. Neeta is here, and what is in news these days is Neeta, not Neeta, but Nitesh Rane. Very little difference between Neeta and Nitesh. But the great difference is, Nitesh is one person who does not want to pay the price when he wants to cross the borders. He says, no, I will not pay the toll tax. But here is Neeta and her team. They say, no, we will cross the borders of the language and we will pay that price. Even if some poetry is lost in the translation, that it is worth trying ultimately. And it is this kind of a thing that is important, and it is this kind of a thing which will survive. I really don't want to take much of a time, even if it is through a glance of a eye or through a fleeting gesture, that the world of emotions that can be recreated. We have an eminent personality over here. In his every word, at the root of his every word, Gulzarji's word, there are songs. Those are there. I will only say, what is that I expect from the translation? There are translations in Marathi, there are translations in Konkani. The original poems which are there, it is as if like this poet, she has invested her soul into the original poems. And what have the translators done? एका भाषेतल्या कलाकृतीचा प्राण उचलून संपूर्ण नव्या भाषेत तो पुन्हा रुजवायचा आणि त्या प्राणाभोवती नव्या श्वास उश्वासांची धपापती लय जिवंत करायची, नव्या धमन्यांमधील नव्या रक्ताचे कृष्ण आवेग वेगाने वाहते करायचे, एका भाषेतील कलाकृतीचं आयुष्य नव्या भाषेत पुन्हा जन्माला घालायचं आणि तिला नवीन शरीर, नवीन शब्द, नवा श्वास आणि नवा स्वर द्यायचा. ही सगळी अनुवादकांकडून अपेक्षा असते, किमया असते. मला वाटतं कुठेतरी ती याच्यात साधली झाली. दिस इज नॉट जस्ट अन ट्रान्सलेशन, दिस इज अन ट्रान्सक्रिएशन. समथिंग that is, you are picking up something, you are picking up the root, you are touching the root, you are taking the fragrance of one language, you are taking it to another. This is a great service not only to Goa, I will say to everybody, because you are uniting languages, you are uniting different hearts. I wish the author and the translators, the good heart, they say that yes, the work of an author is a national phenomena, but a translator is a universal language. Because he translates, he carries the fragrance all over the world. It's but fitting that Gulzarji, who has been widely translated himself, who has done a great service to Marathi also by carrying Kusman Rush, the best of a flower from Marathi to different languages, he is present over here. As I said, I will really not be taking much of the time. I request Gulzarji to release the book. Let's have your claps which are matching Neeta's package. Neeta, can I request you to recite a poem?
Original poem written in Marathi. It is translated by my colleague in Hindi, and it's about my daughter. कविता का नाम है जिंदगी जीते वक्त. हर रोज मैं थोड़ा थोड़ा जी लेती हूँ, हर रोज मैं थोड़ा थोड़ा जी लेती हूँ तुम्हारी खुशी की चांदनी घर में फैलते देखकर. हर रोज मैं थोड़ा थोड़ा मरती हूँ, हर रोज मैं थोड़ा थोड़ा मरती हूँ तुम्हारे स्त्रीत्व के संरक्षण की चिंता लेकर. हर रोज मैं थोड़ा थोड़ा चैन पाती हूँ, हर रोज मैं थोड़ा थोड़ा चैन पाती हूँ तुम्हारे मासूम बचपन में प्रौढ़ावस्थाओं को भूलकर. हर रोज मैं थोड़ा थोड़ा रमती हूँ, हर रोज मैं थोड़ा थोड़ा रमती हूँ तुम्हारे बुढ़ा बुढ़ी के खेल छूछ का जीकर। हर रोज मैं थोड़ा थोड़ा नए ऋतु का अनुभव लेती हूँ, तुम्हारे तन मन के बदलते हुए इंद्रधनुष्य को देखकर। हर रोज मैं थोड़ा थोड़ा आशंकित हो जाती हूँ, तुम्हारे अनुभवों के क्षितिज का विस्तार होते देखकर। हर रोज मैं थोड़े थोड़े जिंदगी के रंगों का अनुभव लेती हूँ। हर रोज मैं थोड़े थोड़े जिंदगी के रंगों का अनुभव लेती हूँ, तुम्हें मानव स्वरूप तैयार होते देखकर, तुम्हें मानव स्वरूप तैयार होते देखकर। Thank you.
May I request now the translators, all of them, to come to the stage together to receive their gift from the Priyanka Parab, Mrs. Neha Wade, Antara Bide, Neha Parab, and Nimishri Printers Pushparaj Purna. Please come to receive the gift. And Sunita Torne, the publisher.
Everybody is speaking from this mic, I think it's going across better. So I better speak from the same mic. I will vary with something. With the 3 or 4 translations, 4 languages in this one book, it's easier for me to whether speak in Konkani or Marathi or English or Hindi. कोंकणी और मराठी if I speak, आप नहीं समझेंगे, मैं शायद समझ लूँगा। हिंदी में मैं खुद समझ लेता हूँ, अंग्रेजी मुझे बोलने नहीं आती तो आप समझिए। लेकिन you are a lawyer, sir. I am also neither a lawyer nor a doctor. लेकिन I couldn't really, मैं हिंदी और अंग्रेजी थोड़ी सी मिक्स करके बोल पाता। I couldn't really understand my lawyer was speaking in favor of translation or was speaking against the translation. Because all his arguments went, all his imagery went against the translation. It's a mistress and it's a poor, the fragrance will fly and all that. But he was in favor of doing the translations so that it reaches more and more people. So I think it's left open with us. Which way do you want to side? Which client do you want to approve of? Whether to go for translation or not? Or, because we are not suffering, as you said. I don't think there is any suffering about it. I don't think we are in trouble about it. In a place, in a country where there are 24 to 28 living, vibrant languages, there's nothing wrong with translations, and it should go across. Even if it doesn't go 100%, you know what the other person is saying. And I think a lot of that kind of work is done. 100% translation, yes, may be difficult. 100% translation is not possible even by the author himself. The author that you quoted, our Gurudev, Tagore, if you know Bengali, and if you read, there are many Bengali here who know Bengali, Malla, and Antraji is there, he would know. Whatever Tagore translated himself into English is also not perfect. And that's I will be forgiven if I say it is a bad translation. It's not a good translation at all of his own Bengali poems. Yet, being an author, nobody could hold his hand while he edited his own poems, which were very, very beautiful poems in Bangla. But he edited them. At times he changes the line, changes the imagery, because being an author, nobody could object to it. And a great poet and a great writer. I know if you are not the author, you have no business to change the line. You have no business to take liberty with the original. but come as close as you can. And if it is the mistress of somebody, don't come too close. I would warn you with that imagery which you had which told me. Because then let her independence remain with her or her own choice. But I think that's a very, very healthy trend that we have started translating our fiction, our poetry, our work from one to other Indian languages, and not only English. I have nothing against English, because its market, its reaches much more as a linked language. It goes much across. I would have been able to study many of, for example, Vaikum Bashir, I wouldn't have known if I didn't know, if I couldn't read him in English. Or many of the poets from Oriya, for example, Jayant Mahamantra or Jagatana Mahamantra. These poets I wouldn't have been able to read if I didn't get those translations in English. But those inspired me to know that language. My association, my inspiration for reading Tagore or for reading Bangla came only from the translations which I read in Urdu in the beginning, in my own school days. So this effort and this kind of translation is welcome, and that's what I feel. It should be done more and more. And this bilingual books, trilingual books, and this is the first I think I've seen with 4 languages. But bilingual, trilingual books in India is welcome. Absolutely, it's a tradition. Our living tradition will match these kind of books here. The way every Indian by nature, I think by our upbringing, by culturally also, we speak 2 to 3 languages easily. Every Indian, and this doesn't happen anywhere else in the world where there are not so many languages in a country. And I think it's a special distinction with us, and it should be carried on. And I welcome and I would prefer more and more poetry to be translated in more and more Indian languages, because culturally you can identify with them much more than in saying it, translating in French or Portuguese or any other language. Because English has become an Indian language. English today that we speak is not the Oxford and the Cambridge in which our great Pandit Nehru or Chaudhary or Mulk Rajanand they wrote. Today it's totally an Indian English is an Indian language. So all kinds of translations, according to me, in my humble opinion, are welcome, and much so in poetry, because that's I think it's a hardest sketch who comes much closer to. Then there's a couplet, if I'd be allowed to express about a poet. He says कि बड़ा दोगला है शख्स ये, कोई करे तो क्या करे इसका. ये डबल बोलने वाला आदमी है, जो शायर है ना, इसका कोई क्या कर सकता है. बड़ा दोगला है शख्स से, कोई करे तो क्या करे इसका. न तो झूठ बोले कभी कभी, एक तो झूठ नहीं बोलता, न कहे कभी खरा खरा, वो सीधी बात भी नहीं करता, पूरी खरी खरी भी नहीं कहता. But that's the wrapper of poetry, and that's what is welcome, and that is what is so beautiful. You don't have to be totally खरा खरा, लेकिन झूठ मत बोलना जो भी ट्रांसलेट करना. Thank you.